and welcome to a brand new episode of Talking Law from Women in the Law UK. I'm Sally Penni, MBE, a barrister at Kenworthy's Chambers in Manchester, the Joint Vice Chair of the Association of Women Barristers and the founder of Women in the Law UK. Do come and connect with us on Instagram. Just search for Women in the Law UK. Today you'll hear my conversation with the President and CEO of Lex Mundi, Helena Samaha. Lex Mundi is a global network of independent law firms covering 100 countries and 22,000 lawyers across the world. I asked Helena where her legal career began.
Well, I was in law school in France, and I was determined at the time that I should work for UNICEF. So when I began my career, my heart was actually in human rights law, and somehow I really went off track. But I have had enormously wonderful opportunities and no regrets whatsoever. But that's really where it started for me.
Wow. And can I ask, so you're the original Amal Clooney, really, for those who following. Can you tell me a bit more then about how Lex Mundi came to be before I ask you some personal questions about you, really? Because to have a woman leading such an organization is amazing, really. Because Lex Mundi also deals with, a variety of things, don't you? So can you tell us a bit about that? What does Lex Mundi do, and what's your role there?
So Lex Mundi is a membership organization. It's been around for about 30 years. It was actually launched by the Global General Counsel of ExxonMobil 30 years ago, based in Texas, who decided that there should be an organization such as Lex Mundi as a go-to resource for clients like him that had legal needs all around the world, and wanted to make sure really that they were always working with the top local firms. And so this is how the network was established. And today we are in 160 jurisdictions. And
Wow.
The law firm that is a member, we have one member per jurisdiction. That's our model. And the membership criteria are very stringent. We look for really the top tier firms that are indigenous local firms that have been in their markets for a long time, that are really part of the fabric of their society and really are unparalleled in terms of their knowledge of and access to regulators and really know what's going on the ground. And with our reach, really, we are unrivaled. As I said, we are in 160 jurisdictions, overall 100 countries. Some of our firms have 1,000 lawyers because they're in big markets. Some of our firms have 6 lawyers because they're in a small Caribbean island. But they are all absolutely consistent in really positioning themselves as that top tier local independent firm that, really everybody should want to have on their side.
Yes, absolutely. So can I ask you, we have over 30,000 people who listen to this podcast. If I was a student starting out, or if I was established in a law firm, and I thought, gosh, I love the sound of Lex Mundi and, the global aspect of it. Are there any kind of early career sort of tips or advice you can give for people in those two scenarios?
Sure. I think a lot of it is really about knowing yourself and kind of what makes you get out of bed in the morning. There are so many different options for lawyers today. And I think that's really wonderful. It wasn't so long ago that you would start a career in a firm and you'd be there your whole life and you'd do the same kind of work. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is alongside that reality, a different reality today. And that's one that is full of options and choices. And I think like in any other career, actually, you have to listen to the voices in your head and listen to your instinct and work in an environment, in an area of law, in a type of organization where it suits your personality, it suits the fit is always so essential. And I think that there are some lawyers that like to work in a more commercial environment, and that's why the in-house track is so attractive and so fulfilling. I myself worked as a general counsel in several organizations. There are people who really like the structure and the specialism that you get in a law firm. And I've done that too. So I think it really is just find what you like, try different things, and don't hesitate really to don't shut out the voices in your head. Listen to your own mind when it tells you this is right for me and this is not. But the lovely thing about our industry today is there are so many options.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Women in the Law UK is a women's organisation. We've got lots of men who are members as well, but predominantly we're pushing gender diversity. I wonder, what does that mean to you, and what do you think about diversity in the legal profession? And perhaps, we focus a lot on our small island, that's Britain, but globally, I wonder, what does it mean to you, and what are your views on that?
Well, the first time I became involved in a women's initiative was actually around 2001. I was the general counsel of the Virgin Group at the time, and the Law Society contacted me, and they asked me if I could participate in an open day for young people between the age of 16 and 18 from ethnic minorities to bring them in and talk to them as a panelist about a career in the law. And other panelists were Cherie Blair, Harriet Harman, Julia Chain, the head of the Crown Prosecution Service. So this was quite a long time ago. And we packed in the hall of the Law Society with these incredibly bright young people. I don't want to say children, age 16 to 18. And, when we talked about the challenges we faced, some of us because we're women, others because of their ethnic backgrounds, we were then really hearing some fantastic questions, some really relevant and focused questions from this body of young people. And they were fantastic. It was so clear that they had understood, the pros and cons and, had thought carefully about a career in the law. So, all the way back then, I was part of a group of people that was privileged enough to come and talk to young lawyers of all backgrounds about a career in law. And I think there is much to be gained in any context in having a diverse and fair society, full stop. That is my view. But I think in the law, we are making good strides. And my position at Lex Mundi is extremely privileged. I have a bird's eye view of issues that concern our law firms all around the world. And our law firms are very motivated on the issue of diversity, and we are running a global initiative, which we have called LM Wins, where we have brought together some experts in the field and representatives of all of our law firms, and we are putting together initiatives and programs to help move the dial on diversity.
Wow. And I would think that flexibility and agile working is very much encouraged at Lex Mundi.
Yes. So, we obviously are the membership organization. I was thinking actually about our own statistics. I think almost a good 2/3 of our staff are women, actually.
Yes, I thought that.
Yes. In our law firms, they are, as I said earlier, very motivated on the advancement of women and diversity generally. And if there is anything that we have learned during this difficult year, is that actually, that it's no longer really a sustainable argument to say that you can't do your work in a flexible or remote manner. A lot of the business leaders I'm speaking to, are thinking about, what does the long term look like? How do we maintain the best of what we've learned this year, but also recognizing that it is good to get people together, that, some of the blue sky, free thinking, unstructured conversations that happen when you are together with someone don't happen so readily on a virtual call. The virtual calls have proven to be very efficient to get the job done. So I think that, in an ideal world, in my mind, we emerge from this situation stronger by maintaining the best of what we did before and adding and including the best of what we've learned from this year.
I'm just in awe of you, because I think, you've got a real view and a passion for progression, which is wonderful to see, and a senior woman. I wonder if I can take you back a little before I move on. You mentioned earlier about Virgin at the Virgin Group, which is enormous. You know, depending on how old people are, a lot of people think of Virgin as in the trains, right?
Right.
And others they just think about the aeroplane, and that's it. I'm thinking of Virgin Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
You know, the group, has so much in it. So I just wondered if you could just give us a gist of, what that role is kind of like. Because often people think, oh, it's private practice or the bar, and that's it. And we don't often get a real feel about that excitement. I interviewed a lawyer for Vimto, the drinks company. So I wonder if you could just give an overview of what that was like being GC, what sort of things came up, I guess.
Sure. Well, firstly, you're very gracious and kind. So thank you, Sally. Everything came up when I worked at, I joined the organization in 1998. I had been at Clifford Chance before that, so it was fundamentally different as an environment. And it was really at a time when the Virgin Group was expanding internationally and expanding in terms of industries. So you never knew what was going to be on your desk when you walked in, but you always knew that you would never be bored, that you would be challenged. A lot of the work that I did, because I worked at the global headquarters of the group, where Richard Branson and his senior team ran the organization, there was a lot of new business setup, and we were actually often a challenger coming into an established market, trying to shake things up. So lots of regulatory issues and discussions with regulators, new business models, some risk taking, lots of joint ventures, so that when we were going into these new things that people had not done before, we had a partner to help us through it. So it was really actually one of the most remarkable experiences that I could have had as a young lawyer, and very unexpected for me, because in truth, back then, the perception of working in-house was, kind of the lawyers who couldn't cut it in the law firm went in-house.
Yes, which is nonsense.
Which was nonsense, but even I didn't know better. I was young and foolish, and I was working at Clifford Chance, and I got approached for this opportunity, and I said, absolutely not, I'm not going in-house. But as it turned out, the recruiter who was filling the role was a former colleague from Clifford Chance and a friend. And so he called me 3 days in a row saying, you need to go to this interview. And eventually I just went so he would get off my back, frankly. And was absolutely charmed by the people that I met there. And that's really how it happened. So it was a deep dive, I'm not going to lie. But, a great way to learn that sometimes you can be your own worst enemy if you don't keep an open mind. And that's one of the best lessons that I've learned actually in my career.
Absolutely. I love that advice. I have to remember that. Helena, I can see from where you are in your office, there are some certificates, and it looks like you're on the cover of Vogue or something in that picture there. And lots of bookshelves there, and folders and work. So, work is very important to all of us. I often talk about burnout in our profession. I wonder, what do you do for your well-being, and what have you done, or what would you like to do?
Well, I am certainly on a mission to find a hobby, because I do work probably most of the time, but I have grown-up children now, and they save me from myself. So they organize lots of things for us to do together, whether it's theater or museum. We like we adore London, and London has so much to offer in this respect. In terms of what I do just myself, I like to exercise. I like to be outdoors, and mostly I cycle. But as the years go by, I've become quite concentrated on the fact that I need to find myself a hobby. And that's not something that I have. And I admire people that have a good hobby, is something that they can do on their own, that entertains them and gives them that little bit of free time and space in their minds for themselves. So all ideas welcomed, but I can't cook to save my life. So cooking's definitely off the table, but I can try other things.
I wonder if you have time to read socially. We've got a book club at Women in the Law UK. And so I'm going to ask you sort of two questions, really. One, if you've got a favorite fictional lawyer from books or television or films. And really, if you've got a favorite book, and why.
I don't really have a fictional lawyer, to be honest. I do read a lot of books. I've read all the John. So I like novels. And I like things that have an aspect of suspense or a thriller or a crime-solving story. So I do like the lawyers that feature in John Grisham's books, and I have read them all. I typically will go down to Waterstones and just say to them, what's the best-selling thriller at the moment? And I'll read that. So I get through quite a lot of them. That's the kind of easy reading that I like to do. In terms of my favorite book, it's actually a completely different kind of book. My favorite book is called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran.
Yes.
And I do love that book. It's when I read a
brilliant book.
It's brilliant. And often I have this funny habit. When I read a book, I like to share it. So I don't actually often keep the books that I read. I pass them on.
Oh, right.
But The Prophet is a book I have in hard copy that stays on my shelf next to my bed and will always be there. So those are my funny reading habits.
Wow. No, I love that. What is it about The Prophet that you love, especially for those who haven't read it? I know I've read it, so I won't do any kind of spoiler, but it is quite an interesting book, isn't it, to kind of keep one going? Can you tell us maybe briefly what it's about and why you have that copy still with you?
I have it. Well, first of all, I love the wisdom about it. I mean, he wrote this book in 1901, so he was an incredibly enlightened philosopher. I love the way that it's structured. It's one topic per subject. So if you're thinking about something and you want to just be grounded again in the reality of what really matters, what's important, when there's so much noise and sometimes you struggle to see through the fog and you're bombarded by lots of things, you can pick it up and it just really helps clear the mind and focus on what matters. If it's your work, if it's about your children, if it's about marriage, if it's about your friends, if it's about the society you live in. I love that in such a short and concise manner, topic by topic, his wisdom and philosophy of life is actually so very real and so very correct in my mind. And it just helps, ground me and ground things that I'm thinking about.
Wonderful. Well, you've got to. I found a hobby. You just need to come to our book club once a month.
Yeah.
They're not always inspiring books, I should say that, but it's certainly Secret Barrister this month. Helena, you've been in the legal profession for quite some time. You're an experienced and very able counsel, and and your life is really quite inspirational, and the roles that you've had. But I wonder if you've had any kind of times which are not being so good, obstacles, perhaps difficulties. And I just wonder if you had any tips for how to get over some of those not so great times that people experience, not just for COVID, but, making applications, writing lots of applications for work experience or, jobs, for training contracts or for the bar, and how people can keep that momentum going and get over those obstacles.
Well, I think, there is something to be said about perseverance and resilience. It's just a fact of life that sometimes you've got to work really hard to get through certain things and get on top of certain things. So I think, not be afraid of working hard to get what you want is something that, will help. The other thing is I'm a great believer in getting help. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting help. And my children, who are all in science, nobody's followed
in law.
Nobody's in law. I managed to put them off the law. They have a lot of friends who are interested in law, and they always bring me those friends because I can't get enough of helping young people and trying. I think it's really important, and it's okay to ask for help, to say to people, "What do you think about that? Can you read this for me?" The number of personal statements I've read for university applications among my friends' children, and so on and so forth. And I do believe really in that model of being open to hearing what other people advice is. You don't have to follow it. You don't have to agree with it. But that open mind and that willingness to say to someone, could you help me with this? Could you look at that? What do you think of this? I think it really goes a long way. And you learn very quickly that the things you grapple with, honestly, most people grapple with as well.
Absolutely. Can I ask you then now about COVID? We're in it, so we might as well talk about it very briefly. Do you see any kind of advantages or issues coming out? Well, lots of issues coming out for the legal profession. They were looking at redundancies in the traditional firms, not all, of course. But I wonder if what do you think will be some of the issues that will come out for our sector? and maybe some advantages. You already mentioned the fact that actually the home working has become a bit of a norm, hasn't it? So that's a gain out of what's a crisis. But yeah, I wonder if you can think if there are any opportunities perhaps that you might think, and maybe, some not so good issues that may arise for our sector.
Well, I think a lot of the work that lawyers do is a result of regulation that's passed. And I think that we are already seeing, and we will see, a very different regulatory landscape around the world. We do a lot of work with our member firms, and again, we have this incredible global reach, which enables us to have some very interesting conversations on global trends. We are seeing fragmentation of risk, for example, which is driving different behaviors. We are seeing new regulations, in some case deregulation. Antitrust is an area where we're starting to hear that there's quite a lot of new rules coming out to facilitate acquisitions, which otherwise may have been put under the microscope because otherwise too many companies will fail. So I do think actually that now is a great time to be in the law. I know our member firms are extremely busy, and that clients really all around the world are in need of support as COVID happens. Because it is changing the landscape in many respects for businesses, and people need their lawyers to help them. So I think that actually COVID is perhaps driving some more energy into the relationship between clients and law firms, because the landscape is changing and we all need to learn about it and help our clients with it. The downside clearly is that if there is a prolonged recession, there will be job losses. And I think by and large, certainly in our network, we haven't heard of much by way of redundancies at all. I think one of the lessons that was learned with the 2008 crisis, when one of the early reactions in many industries, including the law, was to let people go. And then when a business picked up, it was an issue. It was complicated. Hiring, it takes time, finding the right people, etc. So I think one of the lessons that firms have learned is that you need to mind your stuff and you need to hang on to them to the greatest extent possible. So that I think is a good thing. But there are clearly some sectors that have been so hardly hit. And, often in a recession, the companies really that go under first and more are companies that perhaps were not so solid in the first place. What's sad about the environment we're in today is even healthy and good companies are on the verge of collapse because of a complete standstill in certain sectors of the industry. So that I think is tough. But as far as I can see from the conversation certainly we've had within the network, the lawyers are busy. They're busy helping their clients through this.
Yeah. That's good. Well, that's very useful to know, actually. I was just making a note there. Now, Helena, I want to ask you this. I don't ask very many people this question. And I wonder if you had any advice for your younger self. And I don't know about you, but when I was younger, I was very aggro. I took every point. And as I'm older, I only take the best points I'm going to win on, and the rest can, fall aside. But I wonder, just in life, I think I'm probably a bit more patient now. If you had to give yourself any kind of early advice, I wonder what it might be. Do you have any kind of advice or tips for wisdom that you might tell her?
Yeah, I mean, I do sometimes, and I did back then, get a bit worked up more than I should on certain things. So I think that maybe just to try to relax, I think is helpful. But what has served me well is that I have always kept an open mind. And people often ask me, how did you plan your career? And I wish I could say I did, but it's more a case of opportunities came along. And if they were in the form of people that I thought would be interesting to work with, I was quite good at saying, what's the worst can happen? Let me give this a go. That has served me very, very well. But I do realize that sometimes I would get a bit more worried than I should about certain things. And so, if anything, I would say to myself, just have a bit more trust and faith that you don't need to control everything for it to go the way you want it, and just to be a little bit more relaxed.
Yes, yes. God, that's such good advice. I need that too.
It's what
And
my kids do to me now, so clearly I need it again.
I think we all need it, don't we? We all need it. Helena, I know we're coming towards the end, but I asked this question because it's quite poignant, and I wonder if you've had a case which has really meant something to you, or has really kind of set you on your career. And often people say, "Oh, it was my first case when I was on my feet." For those of us at the bar, and some firms will say, some of my solicitor guests will say, it's a it was on this issue. We didn't make any money. I acted for them on a pro bono basis, or whatever it is. And others will say, well, it was this case. It was reported in the Court of Appeal, etc., etc., etc. And so I wonder if you've had like either a moment or a case which you thought, right, this has really made me, or it's really set you on your path, and maybe you could share that with us.
I'm not sure it set me on my path in terms of the career direction I took, but it certainly taught me that if you're resourceful, and taught me I was resourceful and how important that was. But I was a newly qualified lawyer, and a senior associate asked me to babysit a file. And it was an aircraft leasing file. The bank was our client, and every month we just had to make sure that the bank got paid by the airline. And she said, nothing ever happens. It just ticks along. Next week, the airline will make the payment. And off she went to New Zealand for 3 weeks. And the day after she left, the airplane in question that was insured and leased crashed and was a total loss. And I had no idea what to do. She was the only point person on this case. The oversight partner was off doing some big transaction somewhere. I couldn't get a hold of anyone. And I somehow, and this was in the 90s, I had to find a way to get my bank paid. And it was 21 million odd pounds at the time, which is a lot of money.
Yes, it is. In any time.
And the airline said, why should we pay you? We don't have an aircraft. And the bank is saying, no, you need to pay me because you owe me this money. And I got stuck in the middle of resolving that. It was probably a week of almost every night was an all-nighter. I never, ever had to work so hard, but I resolved it. And eventually
Wow.
the lead partner, who was off somewhere, came back, said, I had this call from our clients. They're so delighted with what you did. What on earth did you do? And I just thought, wow, I did this, and little old inexperienced me, nothing was supposed to happen. And then all hell broke loose, and somehow I got through it. And that was really a turning point for me, actually.
Wow. And do you think that, I don't know what you're like about confidence, but sometimes when you win certain cases, it does boost your confidence. And often when I talk to men, they say to me, well, you talk about confidence and, women progressing all the time, but sometimes it just comes down to confidence on some issues that we kind of become a little bit more reserved. But in that case, I mean, I'm just in shock. I couldn't close my mouth at what had happened. I thought you were going to say, oh yeah, something happened, but I didn't think it was that. Do you think that kind of boosted you or made you think, yeah, I'm good at this?
Well, the first thing that happened when it finished is I slept for 2 days because I hadn't slept in a week. But yeah, it just made me realize actually that that you can find solutions. You find solutions. It wasn't easy, and the law firm acting on the other side had some young lawyer going around on the tarmac at the airport trying to find one of the original engines that was supposed to be on the craft but had been swapped out because otherwise the insurance wouldn't pay. And I just thought, I'm lucky I'm not that person. So, so it was a little bit complicated, but in reality, everyone wanted to fix it. And what was really hard is that I was on my own.
Yes.
But, everyone wanted to find a solution. And I think that's the confidence piece is actually, when you operate well with a team, you get the success as a team, and that helps. But when you're on your own, it can be a little bit harder. And when you do manage to pull something off, it definitely does boost your confidence. I'm much more of a team player. I would have much preferred not to be on my own dealing with that. But I realized that, if you have to do it, you just get it done. And that does boost your confidence.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. Now, my final question is this, because I know that we all want to come and work for Lex Mundi in your network. If you had to sort of employ, what would be your ideal candidate, your ideal Lex Mundi lawyer?
Well, I mean, there's two levels. There are people that are recruited into our law firms, which obviously we don't really get involved in. So the membership criteria are about the firm itself. And you're right, they are very stringent. And then there's Lex Mundi itself, which is the membership organization where we have a team of people looking after all of our law firms. And that's where we really pick the profile of people that we like. And from my perspective, it really is, as I mentioned earlier, the team spirit.
Yes.
I think that in an organization such as ours, we lead with team success, and the individuals are successful because their teams are successful. It's not a sharp elbow environment. We really drive that team spirit very hard, and that works well for us. And the reality is that it's really important to work with people that you like, you like to work with, and it's a very, very friendly bunch at Lex Mundi. The people that work for us have very impressive CV credentials and pedigree, but they're just really nice people who roll their sleeves up and get on with the job, and that are driven by the success of the whole rather than the success of the one. And that, I think, is really, in a nutshell, the kind of people that work for us at Lex Mundi.
I love that. I think I'm going to use that, the success of the whole, as opposed to the success of one. I'll credit you, of course, Helena. But it's just, you've just said so many wise things that have really got me thinking. It's so wonderful to spend time talking to you and talking about your career and your organization, really, and really having the advice and tips are really, really helpful and really lovely. And so just before we go, for young mothers, have you got any tips for young mothers who are sort of, had a career and then suddenly they've had children and they're wondering how they're going to come out of the other end? Yours are grown up, so you can actually give some of us a bit of an advice or a tip how to get through it.
Well, again, I mean, it is a lot of resilience and persistence. In reality, an enormous amount of hard work. I'm not going to lie. But going back to what I said earlier, I was always very happy to have help in the form of, my husband was always extremely hands-on and a great partner in our family life. And that made a huge difference to me. And we always got help. We made it a priority. Whatever spare money we could. If it wasn't paying the mortgage, it was paying some help. And also we stayed very close to our families who were able to help and support. So I think in many ways, again, it was a real team effort. I didn't do anything alone. I did it because I was blessed to be surrounded by people who wanted the same outcome. And my husband and my kids have also been very supportive of my career. And I think that gives you a real moral boost as well, because inevitably the guilt chips away at you. You're always at work. And, when they make you feel like they're proud of you and they want you to keep going, it gives you that extra energy. It's not easy. It is really actually quite hard in reality, but it can be done. It's all about what your personal choices. What choice do you want for yourself?
Yes.
And then just go get it, really.
Just go and get it. Wonderful. Helena, I want to just ask you very quickly about the Lex Mundi Pro Bono Foundation, which I came across in my research about Lex Mundi and indeed you. What is it and why was that set up?
So the foundation was set up a while ago before I joined the organization, and its mission is to help social entrepreneurs. What we do is, obviously, we have this access to this vast network of stellar lawyers. And so we match basically the social entrepreneurs in need of legal advice to get their businesses going with lawyers looking to do some pro bono work. So what's really important to the organization is the social nature of the enterprise it concerned. And we help people all around the world. As a matter of fact. So, and we work with strategic partners sometimes. I know that they have done some work with MIT University and they've done some work with the World Economic Forum. And really, as we look at some of the the regulatory changes happening around our world in the business of investment and acquisitions. There's a real rise in the ESG factors as companies are assessed and valued. Their environmental, social, and governance scores are becoming more and more important in today's world. And so that social score, if you like, is quite relevant also to the work that the Pro Bono Foundation does. So they are actually separate as an entity from Lex Mundi itself, but they are really the Pro Bono arm of Lex Mundi, and that's what they do.
Well, Helena Samaha, I just love that name. You sound like an author. Thank you so much for talking law with me, Sally Penni, MBE, for Women in the Law UK. Thank you, Helena.
Thank you, Sally. It's such a privilege. Thank you so much. You've been so gracious.
A big thanks to Helena Samaha, CEO of Lex Mundi. How fantastic to find out more about their Pro Bono Foundation. Thank you again for listening to Talking Law with me, Sally Penni. You can find me on Twitter at SallyPenny1. Please do leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast and do subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thank you so much to Lex Mundi, the world's leading network for independent firms, for supporting this episode. And thanks also to Sam Walker and our production team at What Goes On Media. Bye-bye for now.